upon finishing my master's, I realized how much there is to know in the nutrition space. I think sometimes the more study you do in an area, you realize, the less you actually do know. And I decided that I wanted to be the best dietitian that I could be.
Welcome to How to Build a Profitable Nutrition Business. If you love nutrition and you love helping people and you want to be in the game long enough to keep doing that, then this is the podcast for you. Let's get into it. I'm sure you'll agree it's hard not to be impressed by today's guest. Today's guest is Sophie Horton. Sophie graduated from a Master of Dietetics at the end of 2023. I've asked Sophie to come on and detail her experience of entering that nutrition business space since graduating and how she felt prepared coming into that space through university. Sophie's only been graduated just over 6 months. She scored multiple roles. She's the head dietitian for the Sandringham Zebras VFL club, the Southern Saints VFLW club. She also works for the North Melbourne AFLW football club. She has a part-time role with Encore Nutrition, and she's also a presenter for a company called Game Day Nutrition, where she delivers sports presentations to high school athletes. Join me now to hear Sophie's experience into the nutrition business space and how she felt prepared stepping into that space through her time at Swinburne University's Master of Dietetics. Let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of How to Build a Profitable Nutrition Business. This week, we are tapping into the expertise of a new graduate. And so I'm really excited to get on Sophie Horton, who graduated in 2023, I believe, from Swinburne University, doing a Masters of Dietetics. And Sophie's achieved more in 6 months than I feel like I have in over a decade. So it's great to have her on, but I'm excited to get the perspective of a new graduate coming on and just Sophie's insights into stepping into the business world from university and, how she felt prepared for that and what are the steps and advice she got. So thanks so much for coming on, Sophie.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris. Very excited to be chatting with you this morning, and let's dive into it.
Yes. So let's step back now. You were a personal trainer initially, right? So most personal trainers, I mean, for the best part, they're in business from the start, aren't they? So you've probably got, am I right in saying you've probably got some sort of business now as a personal trainer before sort of then becoming a dietitian? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely fair to say. So working as a PT while I studied my dietetics degree and my nutrition science bachelor's, I definitely had an insight into that business world, I think, before finishing my master's and, juggling clients and appointments and, a very up and down schedule. So definitely had a little bit of insight into the business world before going into it post-graduation.
Was your plan to always then go into private practice as a dietitian or use it with your personal training? Like, what were you thinking? What was your sort of original thought when you took on a degree?
Yeah, honestly, I definitely had it in the back of my head to go into the private practice space and possibly use my dietetic studies alongside the PT qualification. I really wanted to be able to help clients from both ends, from the exercise side of things and also from the nutrition side of things. And I think working in that PT space, I was constantly probably seeing a lot of advice being given out that shouldn't have been given out in gyms from a nutrition point of view. But having the education knowledge I had, I was always referring to dietitians in that space before I was qualified. But I knew that a lot of clients I worked with just wanted to go to one person and get the both exercise and diet advice. So I thought it would be really cool to be able to finish my master's and have both of those qualifications and be able to give be sort of like a one-stop shop and give the advice from both sides of things. But then I guess upon finishing my master's, I realized how much there is to know in the nutrition space. I think sometimes the more study you do in an area, you realize, the less you actually do know. And I decided that I wanted to be the best dietitian that I could be, and probably pulled back quite a bit from the PT side of things. I wanted to probably do more work in the dietetic space and pull back a little bit from the PT side of things. But I think I definitely, working with clients as a PT, I loved that continual contact with clients and, seeing them, working with them for a long period and seeing them achieve their goals, which I knew that I'd get in that private practice space in dietetics. But then again, going into my course was very open-minded and was like, you know what, I might end up loving the hospital setting and going down that path. So I was very open to, whatever came at the end of my course.
Yeah, I mean, it's so rewarding, isn't it? Like when you're helping clients, seeing them change, like it's motivating, like you get a real buzz out of it. Like I had a previous career as an electrician and you just don't get that, like, so that's what I love about health. Um, just to tap into your PT dietitian juggling, like I went and done a postgrad in diabetes education against my wife's advice. I love diabetes, like I really enjoy helping people with diabetes, but in the end, I worked out I've still only got 40 hours in the week to work, and so as the learning side of it was great, but I got my postgrad and never become certified because I just didn't have the capacity to do both. So it's interesting that you say that, like it kind of helps. I mean, it's great having maybe two hats, but sometimes that's a bit of a juggle, isn't it? Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. I think at the start I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is great. I can juggle both and do a bit of both. But yeah, when you really dive into it, there's so much to know. And yeah, like you said, you've only got capacity for say 40 hours a week. And once I started working in the dietetic space, I just wanted to do that for the whole 40 hours and be the best that I could. So that takes up all my time now.
Yes. And so when you were at uni, because when I went to uni, I wanted to be a sports dietitian, but through uni, I completely flipped and I just fell in love with chronic disease, like with the clinical physiology, So was there a part when you were going through uni that like you sort of changing directions and thinking about different career paths in dietetics?
Yeah, definitely. I think I definitely went into dietetics with that hat that I wanted to be a sports dietitian. And so I actually sought out an internship throughout my master's. So I was working at St Kilda Football Club as a intern, the sports dietitian there. Just because I also knew that, there's not much that you do in terms of the sports side of things throughout the masters. So I thought if I got an internship, I could get an insight into that area whilst I was studying, to really decide that was something that I wanted to continue with post-graduation. But then, like you, Chris, I also sort of fell in love with the chronic disease side of things. And I definitely, didn't want to, upon graduation, just pigeonhole myself, I guess, in the sports side of things and still wanted to work in chronic disease. I did love my clinical placements and working, with a range of different conditions, but I also absolutely loved my internship. So to be honest, in the last few months leading up to graduating at the end of last year, I was very much open to whatever opportunity came to me, because I did love it all. I probably couldn't see myself working in a hospital long term, but knew that I wanted to work still with chronic disease. And I think that's why the private practice alongside the sports stuff I'm doing now is just perfect for me.
Yeah, great. Yeah, look, I'm the same. Like, the hospital doesn't appeal to me. I mean, I get it for some people. That's it's a very important role, but for me, I miss that. And there's certainly hospital dietitian roles that can achieve this, but I miss that continuity of following the patient journey. Whereas the roles I had in hospitals was bedside education. It wasn't, you didn't really get to follow up, and you miss that, don't you? Like, whereas in private practice, you're there for the majority of the journey, which is rewarding.
Absolutely. And I just absolutely love sort of making connections and building connections with people and that long-term contact. So I found what I did find hard in the hospital setting was doing a bit of education for 15 minutes on a Friday afternoon and then coming in on Monday and your patient's being discharged, and you don't really know what the next steps are in their journey. Whereas in coming from that PT background, seeing clients a couple of times a week and for years on end, and really being a big part of their journey and having that constant contact with something that I absolutely loved.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you done an undergrad of nutrition at Deakin University, and then you've done your master's through Swinburne in dietetics. Now, a long time ago when I went to university, they university was very hospital centric, and it needed to be at that time. I'm not being critical, like that's where most of the jobs were. But in turn, like now, Pete Clark told me the other week, I do forget the statistic, but I think we're getting up to 50-50 of new grads going into private practice. How do you feel uni has prepared you for that private practice space? Because I do believe, and this is not casting it across all degrees, but I am aware of some of the stuff Swinburne's doing, which is quite exciting. Like they've got some great initiatives around that private practice space. Did you find that program useful when it comes to graduating?
Definitely. And I think that's really, in the end, what gave me the confidence to go down the path that I did, is the course at Swinburne, and the awesome things they're doing there. I think, yeah, the course was still quite hospital centric, but we did have a 2 week business intensive unit in our course
Oh,
halfway through
wow.
our second year of our masters. And I think, yeah, I'm not sure that all unis actually have a business component in them. I think we're working towards it. Most unis are working towards it. But Swinburne definitely do have it. And yeah, it was absolutely incredible. It was run by Jennifer Donnelly, and she
Shout
really,
out to Jen.
yeah,
Yes.
shout out to Jen, who's also my mentor now as well. But yeah, she absolutely was incredible and inspired and empowered our cohort to take a different path upon graduation. And that statistic you said is interesting because I think, thinking back to it, probably 50% of my cohort have now gone into the hospital setting, and probably 50% have gone down a different path and have started their own business or working in private practice and doing other things in the dietetic space. So yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds pretty spot on, and it's pretty exciting to think that that yeah, it's moving away from being completely hospital centric. And I think without that business 2 week intensive that we did in our Swinburne course, the statistics from my cohort probably would have been quite different.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
so if we can dive in, not too deep, but what are the sort of things covered in that 2 week intensive? Because I'm thinking about myself upon graduation, right? As a new grad, I would have been shitting my pants about starting a business because I was still drowning in all the clinical information. So, like, I would have felt really unprepared. So that's awesome to hear that, there's a 2 week intensive that sort of obviously is giving you the confidence to tread that path early on. Well,
Yeah.
what sort of information is covered in that?
Yeah, we talked a lot about creating business and financial plans. We did a really, and we had lots of guest speakers come and talk to us as well, who had gone down different paths and weren't working in hospital, and yeah, gave lots of business tips and things. I think one of the biggest things was we did an assignment that was about creating your own small business, whether that was setting up like a private practice or my partner and I, we set up a business where we were going to go and talk to schools and run sports nutrition presentations. And within that assignment, we had to, work out the costs of sessions and how we were going to advertise, and ultimately make money. And then at the end of the 2 week intensive, we actually pitched our business to the rest of the class. But yeah, rather than obviously in clinical placements and things, we're doing lots of nutrition counselling, and like you said, we're drowned in that clinical knowledge. This 2 week intensive was thinking about, yeah, like, if you were to run your own business, how you make money, make profit, how what you do from a tax perspective.
Wow.
Yeah, like all of those business skills that I think we don't have and aren't set up with. So we just think that it's not possible to go into that space. But even in saying that, we also were just shown where to, if we wanted to go down that path, where to access resources that would help us to succeed. For example, we had one session where Jen showed us the small business manual from Dietitians
Oh,
Australia,
yes. Yeah, yeah.
which is, yeah, a really nice big manual that basically steps you through all different things from how to work with Medicare, the NDIS scheme, private health insurance, because they're all things that going into private practice or starting your own business, and you need to know how to do. But yeah, you don't learn that working in a hospital or doing your placements in hospitals.
Yeah. Oh,
Even
wow.
though we couldn't cover the nitty gritties of absolutely everything in that 2-week course, she gave us the knowledge to know where to actually look when we finish to find how to process Medicare claims and how to set up a Proto account and things like that.
Oh, far out. That would have been amazing. Like even when I started my main private practice, like multiple years after graduating, like a little course like that would have been phenomenal. So that's really encouraging to hear that such a thing is out there. So you graduated at the end of last year. Um, I think it's fair to say that you've got a lot of get up and go. You established your own business initially and still doing that. So you managed to score contracts with a VFL club and an AFLW club. Tell
Yes.
me about your process. So, like, okay, you've graduated. You'd already be doing like an internship with the St Kilda Football Club. This is all off your own bat, isn't it? Like you've just got up and got stuff going. How how did you find from graduation to okay, I've got to get moving? Is it the instant you graduate, you've just gone and started sorting contracts out, started working?
Yeah, great question. I was actually on my final placement down in Warrnambool in end of November last year. And so I'd been working at St Kilda Football Club with my internship for the year, and then found out that the VFL dietitian was actually moving on. So she got a full-time job with Melbourne Storm as their dietitian, which is really exciting for her. And so cool for, sports dietitians, to be moving into the full-time
Yeah,
capacity. So exciting. So she was moving on from the Sandringham Zebras, and obviously, St Kilda's VFL affiliate. I found out about that position. And reached out to her, and she was conducting interviews when I was on placement in Warrnambool. So actually, in one of my lunch breaks in my last couple of weeks of placement, jumped on a Zoom interview. That was that. And then I actually found out that I got the position, I think, in my last week of the 5-week placement. So I was very lucky to sort of score a job in the industry before I actually graduated.
how
Um,
good.
and then jumped into that. We sort of started pre-season in December, so jumped straight from placement into that first role. And I
So,
guess,
Sophie, sorry. So, just to be clear, so was that an employment role rather than you were contracting to them? Like, how does that work?
employment for the season.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, so I sort of got a season contract.
yeah,
Um, and so, knew that I'd be jumping in from December until like December the following year kind of thing.
yeah. Okay. Oh, wow. And so how many hours of your week? So you sort of because I mean, we were speaking before we started recording it, and your week is basically made up of different contracts and employment roles. So, like with that role, how many hours a week did you start off with?
Yeah, great question. So with that one, sort of around 5 to 6 hours a week. So not a huge amount of hours. And like a lot of VFL clubs don't even actually have dietitians. So
Yeah,
it's really cool that we do it Zebs, and the boys have a contact to have me to work with them. But a lot of VFL clubs just don't even have the money to pay a dietitian. So we're lucky to even have 5 or 6 hours a week. But knowing that obviously that wasn't enough to make up my working week, that's sort of probably what pushed me into starting up my own business. Because I guess private practice and working in sport sort of go hand in hand, more so than getting like a part-time job in a hospital and juggling that alongside the sporting role. Especially because, once you start working with a sporting team, like I found that I would, have people at the club come and talk to me and say, oh, I know this person, this young athlete who needs a dietitian, or
yes,
can you can you consult with my mum and things like that. So you do generate a lot of referrals from working in the sporting space. So pretty much as soon as I got that role and started working in it, I thought I need to set up my own business so that when those referrals do come in, I am able to see those clients.
yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So what advice were you given then for setting up the business? Like what are the steps that you initially did to get yourself set up and operating?
Yeah. So I think like the day after I finished my last day at uni or my last placement, I messaged Jen that next day and was like, oh my gosh, like I'm jumping into the private practice space. Like I feel so empowered from that business unit you did. Like, will you mentor me? And she replied back instantly and said, of course. So I was very lucky to score an awesome mentor. And I think that's probably one of my biggest pieces of advice. If you know that you do want to go into this space, getting the right mentor is really, really important. And in saying that, I actually have two different mentors. So Jen's sort of my business mentor, and then I do have another mentor up in Brisbane, Aidan Muir, who's a sports
Oh,
dietitian.
yes. Yes, yes.
Yeah, so he's also another mentor. As Jen's not a sports dietitian, I thought I also wanted to get a mentor in that space too, knowing that I was working with athletes. So, yeah, I think getting a mentor in the business space, if you want to go down into private practice side of things, is so, so important. Just having Jen's support really helped me, to take off straight away in December. Her advice, so that small business manual that I talked about before, I basically pull that out and it's got so many great steps in how to start everything up and really followed that. And if I had questions, shot Jen an email and she helped me out
Yeah.
from that side of things. But I think one of the biggest pieces of advice from her and also from Aidan, my other mentor, was to keep costs as minimal and as low as possible to begin with.
Yeah.
Because obviously when you're first starting out, you don't have, you're not going to have your books full. And
Yeah.
yeah, the last thing that you want to do is to be paying rent somewhere and not having the clients come in and ending up, out of pocket yourself. So I think to be successful, it's really good to try and keep things as low as possible to begin with, and
Yeah.
build up from there. Because I
That's
could, easily got carried away with, getting the best subscription for a website builder and, paying hundreds of dollars for a logo and things like that, and paying rent to use a room. But that also scared me because I was like, well, yeah, what if I have all these costs and then no clients to begin with? And yeah,
yeah.
I'm probably not going to last in the industry. So yeah, that's
That's
the
great
biggest thing.
advice
Yeah.
because you can very quick, all those costs add up so quickly. And so you initially were doing telehealth, weren't you? So you all potentially still are. So you don't have a room anywhere, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So I decided just to do telehealth, and I think in this day and age, people prefer and people like to jump online. They're used to it. So
Mm.
I didn't find too much drama with just offering telehealth from the
Yeah.
beginning, and it kept costs low. So that's the path I decided to go down to begin with.
Yeah, look, that is such great advice because I mean, there's so many things now that you can do for free or very cost effectively, whether it's a website, logo on Canva, starting off in telehealth to dip your toe, build up that caseload. Because I know when we had our business, rent was our second biggest expense outside of wages, so it was like, I mean, wages you obviously can't keep low. Like it's, you got to pay people and pay yourself, but rent was just something that was you kind of at the whim. You've got to see X amount of clients each week just to meet those costs, and so something like telehealth is brilliant for it. Did you set up a like a booking system? Like, were you using a particular software provider to take your bookings? I
Yeah,
imagine.
yeah. So I again used the small business manual and had a look in there. There was all different suggestions. I actually used Helixy to begin with.
Yeah.
Helixy was free and is free to use. I think you can pay for certain settings, but I didn't have to have a subscription or anything for Helixy.
They make their money on the SMS and
Yes.
the payment. They take a clip off
Exactly
everything.
correct. Yeah, which is something you don't have to opt in for. So I, obviously to keep costs low, didn't do all those fancy things, and thought again they're things that I can look to do in the future once I built the business up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I guess the other big piece of advice that I was actually given from the dietitian that I took over from at Sandy Football Club, who's now working at Melbourne Storm, Georgia Walker. She did say to me, when you're beginning, you know, if you're working as a PT or you've got some work at the gym, like keep that bit of work on the side while you're building up your business.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to, when you're starting out, you don't have to be working full time in dietetics when you finish. You know, make sure that you've got some income that's set on the side and you know you're getting each week. And then it takes a lot of pressure off you as well with your own
Oh,
business. Again, one week you could see 5 to 10 clients, and the next week you might not have, you know, anyone booked in. So I think that was really, really good advice that I took on board. And yeah, just made sure that I kept a few hours of work a week.
yeah, yeah.
I'll
Great
spare.
advice. Great
Yeah,
advice because it's so stressful, you know, like the thing with dietetics is, you know, people will cancel. You know, rainy days we would have more cancellations. And so you would be stressing because like when people don't show up, you don't get paid. And so having that fallback option is great advice. So yeah,
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
I
Okay,
think
so
yeah,
no,
actually
you're right.
something that I thought of as well, Chris, that I know that a lot of people are sort of scared to go into that private practice space when they begin, as they're like, I'm just, you know, just fresh out of uni, like I could get anyone. And I definitely felt all of those feelings as well. But one thing that I did too was I set up like a email that went out to clients when they booked in, and it just had a simple question sort of saying, what do you want to get out of this consultation and why are you booking in? And that I found really, really helpful because I had a bit of background around the client before they came in. So if I did want to do a little bit of background reading or research, or, you know, bring them up and ask them a couple of other questions before they came in, I could do that. And that really gave me confidence to jump straight into the private practice space. Because obviously in the hospital setting, you can take your time and read through some notes and have all that background information about the patient there. And I think it scares people that anyone can come into private practice and sit down and they don't know what they're coming in for. But I actually think that clients really appreciate it even if they didn't write anything in my initial client form that I gave them. If I just gave them a buzz and just asked them, yeah, what they wanted to get out of the session and why they were coming to see me, they actually really appreciated it. And that's something you can do completely.
There's one question you asked there, which we brought into our pre-appointment form, which for me was it just took the weight off my shoulders, and that was, what do you hope to get out of this consult? Right. And because we would get referrals from doctors, and the doctor might have all their medical history, but not really say what it is the client's coming for. And you're kind of sitting there at the start going, well, and sometimes we had clients on care plans that didn't even know why they were there. They just referred, you know, and it's kind of like we're wasting 5 minutes at the start, but we put that in our client questionnaire, the pre-appointment questionnaire. And it was phenomenal. You then know, okay, well, I'm here because I want this, and it's got nothing to do with what the doctor said, but that's what the client wants. So that's what you're then addressing. So I love that, Sophie. That's fantastic. And there's actually really cool tools like low cost tools through Zapier or ManyChat that you can use, you know, in addition to email, you can use through social media like through Facebook or Instagram that can actually automate a lot of those questions for you. It's very
Yeah,
conversational. So yeah. I can yeah, show you a bit of that stuff. It's really cool. Look into it.
absolutely. I'd love that. Yeah.
All right, so your week now, we're nearly finished, right? So your week now is with made up with the Sandringham Football Club.
Yeah.
You've got a role with the AFLW side, which is, sorry, I'm not AFL. What
Yeah.
side?
North Melbourne
North
Kangaroos.
Melbourne, North
Yeah.
Melbourne. And then you've also now working for Encore Nutrition down there in Melbourne. So you're now part of a team of dietitians for 2 days a week. So you like how that's a fair bit of diversity, but you look like you're just loving life. Tell us just a little bit about each of those roles. I mean, the Sandringham one you've told us about, but
Yeah.
the AFLW and the Encore I'd love to hear about, and just sort of where you landed and how you're finding those positions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess going back to running telehealth with my own business, I and talking through, I think I mentioned before that when you start working at a sporting club, you do generate a lot of referrals through there. And I found that working in my community with the Sandringham Zebras, I was getting a lot of inquiries through my business, but people wanting to see me in person because they were local. And, you know, especially people that already knew me, they wanted to come and catch up and chat, not over the computer screens. So yeah, I mean, I've consulted with people in, all around Australia, which has been really cool, and telehealth's been awesome for that. But I think the people that already knew me or lived, 5 minutes down the road from Sandy Footy Club, they really wanted that in-person consultation. So I guess I was from the start of the year was offering telehealth, but still looking at options for a room that I could consult from. And yeah, I talked to, a couple of physio clinics. I looked at renting my own room, but again, it scared me having that rent to pay on top of my apartment rent each week. So yeah, I think starting out, I liked the idea of paying a percentage of my consults to a clinic that I worked at rather than renting a room as such.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did speak to a few physio clinics and things, but you also have to weigh up if you are going to work out of a medical clinic or a physio clinic or things like how are you going to generate referrals for clients. And working in a medical clinic would have been great because obviously doctors can refer to you, but I think I did get some really good advice from my mentors that working in a physio clinic, realistically, how many physios are actually going to refer to you as a dietitian? Yeah, I was probably going to be pulling a lot of my own clients into this physio clinic and then paying a certain percentage. So I had to weigh up whether it was worth it. So I actually did turn down quite a few opportunities to rent rooms or work out of rooms to begin with. And then, but was still looking for somewhere in person because I knew that I wanted to be able to offer in-person consults. And then Encore Nutrition, they advertised a role for actually an admin and receptionist a couple of months ago. And I ended up actually applying for that role. Yeah, and long story short, ended up getting offered a position as a casual dietitian there rather than the
Wow.
reception admin role.
How good.
Which is like perfect.
Yeah.
So I'd actually watched Lauren and Elise that run Encore. Since before I started studying nutrition science, I think they opened up their doors in 2017, which was the year I graduated high school, and had followed them on Instagram, since they started and really looked up and admired them. So I actually just applied for that admin role because I was like, these guys have been my role models for ages. Like, I don't even care if I'm not working as a dietitian. Like, I'd love to just work alongside them and have them as mentors in my life. So ended up interviewing for that role, but got a job as a dietitian casually, and yeah, and now they're sort of 2 days a week, which is so cool. So they specialize in ED and oncology, and since starting working in the sporting space, I've realized how much the eating disorders and sport do go hand in hand. So a lot of people go, oh, that's quite different to sport, but it's actually the perfect space to be in. Yeah, I think anyone that's working at that high level, that elite sport, there's always that risk of the ED sort of things. So and I think fresh out of uni, it's so important that I do get adequate support and mentorship in working in that area. So Lauren and Elise are the best people to be learning from there.
Oh, how good. Yeah, look, I mean, you've certainly got an impressive attitude of just throw yourself out there, absorb as much as you can, create the networks, and then the networks will look after you, which is certainly what seems to be happening for you, Sophie. So well done. I just wanted to take a step back quickly. When you were talking about, setting up face-to-face and offices, and just sort of share my point of view there. You 100% are correct in that you've got to be really careful if you do set up an office as to who that's with and where it's at. And I see so many dietitians that fall in with doctor practices, and which is great, but you've got to be thinking, is there enough work here that it's going to sustain the days I'm here, however many days that may be? And the other thing is that other doctors in the area are less likely to refer to you because they don't want to send their clients to another competitor. Even though they may not say that, essentially that's what will happen for the most part. And then Also, doctors like people that bulk bill. So, I historically was a bulk billing dietitian, and we did that. I wasn't initially, like we would charge a gap on our private clients, charge a gap for everyone except for concession card holders. But when we then went bulk billing, our referrals just flooded in. I was thinking, oh, this is great. But I was absolutely flogging myself to death on the bulk billing model, and we were sort of stuck in that model. Then it was beneficial. We used it for like a what we call a loss leader. They would then a lot would then come on private, but it's certainly not something I'll be recommending to a new grad is to sort of go down that path. So be very careful, anyone listening to this, as to where you do get a room, because you've got to think of your referral source, the quality of that referral, and then even getting in with a physio, you've got to be thinking, well, if you are in that care plan space, yes, in the private space, physios and dietitians can work in unison, but in the care plan space, they're actually a little bit of a competitor. Now, I don't like that mentality of, because I think the world's big enough that there's enough business. But when it comes to care plans, they only get 5 visits. And, like I've worked with exercise physicists, and it's like, oh, wow, they've got this many visits. I've only got this many visits, but this person really needs to see a dietitian more. And you kind of get into this headspace where it's, like you've just got to be careful about the referrals and sort of how they go around. So I do like that you've thought very deeply about where you're going to set up and thinking about your referrals. So I think that's great advice to anyone listening. It's not that working out of a doctor's or working out of a physio is a bad idea, but you've just got to put a lot of thought into it as to where you're going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such great points, Chris. And I think that was also one thing I thought, like if I'm working at these sporting clubs and then I go work at it out of a physio clinic, like the physios at the other sporting clubs I'm working at are less likely to refer to me to see people out of a physio clinic because yeah, again, like they're working at their own clinics and they don't want their clients going to another physio clinic. So yeah, it can be like super, like I know when I first talked to this first clinic, it was like in February, and it was like I just want to, a lot of my cohort were getting full-time hospital jobs, and I was feeling like I just wanted to jump into it just to, take up another opportunity. That's soon after graduating, but I'm so glad now that I didn't because everything's worked out so much better, and it's worth
Yeah.
waiting for the right opportunities. But yeah, it can be really tempting to just throw yourself into opportunities without really thinking hard about them. And I think that's where my mentors came into play because without them, I might have just jumped into it. But I really took a step back, had my hour, chats with both of my mentors for that month, and we really pulled apart the opportunities. And they got me thinking about things that I hadn't thought myself just
Yeah.
from their experience. And then from that, I decided, that it was an opportunity that I wanted to turn down at that time, which I'm so glad now because I'm obviously working in an amazing team of dietitians, and it's just a dietetic clinic. So, don't have any of those issues.
Oh, how good! It sounds like you've got a great network around you, Sophie, because you won't have to make half as many mistakes as I did. Uh, Now, just to finish off, so if there's one piece of advice you could give to any person starting out in the nutrition business space, what's that one piece of advice that you would give that's going to help them to make it a success?
Yeah. I think oh, I've got like a few things come to mind. I think the biggest thing, which I've said a million times already this morning, is to get a mentor and get the right mentor for the space you want to work in.
Yeah,
Can I add a couple more points, Chris?
go
Yeah.
for it.
I've just my brain's going crazy. I've just thought of all these things. So get a mentor. I think if you are, still studying your dietetics course and you're not sure if the hospital setting is where you want to be, I think really trying to get some volunteer experience while you're studying is so beneficial. It was even just nice for me knowing that, I'd had that volunteer experience in sports. So if I didn't love the hospital setting, I knew that there was another avenue for dietetics. Whereas a lot of, people in my cohort, if they didn't like that setting, it was very much like, oh my gosh, like have I made the wrong decision doing this course? Because that's all they knew was that clinical placement. But because I had the experience at Saints, I knew that there was a whole different side of dietetics, and the days were just completely different there as
Yeah.
sporting club as to what they were in the hospital. Thirdly, you don't have to rush into full-time work. So I think everyone feels a lot of pressure when they finish dietetics to get full-time work. And although I was given an opportunity prior to graduating, like I said before, it was really only 5 or 6 hours a week that opportunity was. So yeah, I had lots of people in my cohort that were working full-time before I was, and before I built up my week with these other opportunities. So take opportunities, say yes to things, but don't feel like you have to rush into full-time dietetics. If you don't want to work in a hospital setting, get part-time work elsewhere, start up your private practice, and your weeks will build before you know it.
Yeah.
And
No, I love that. All great
yeah.
advice, Sophie.
Thanks, Chris. Finally, as well, I think I forgot to mention it before, but in the entrepreneurial dietetics 2-week intensive that we did do at Swinburne, another thing that we were told about was that the Australian government runs a program called the Self-Employment Assistance Program,
Okay.
SEA, I think, SEAS. And this program offers support to all people wanting to start up small businesses, which I actually did at the start of the year when I started my small business. It basically is, I think it was sort of like it was between 4 or 8 week program. And I think it was a few hours a week. I did mine through Homesglen with
Okay.
and we actually put together a business plan and a financial plan in these small classes. And then from that program, you've got access to a year of business coaching as well.
Wow.
One-on-one business coaching, as well as income support if you're eligible.
Oh, how good's that?
So yeah,
Oh.
so I think that's another thing. Without doing that 2-week business intensive with Jen, like a lot of us wouldn't even known about that program on offer. And I think something, a program like that is huge in helping us succeed in starting our own businesses. So if you
Wow.
are listening to this and you're thinking of starting up your own business, definitely jumping on that self-employment assistance program that the Australian government offers would be a really big piece of advice from me.
We'll find the link and put it in the show notes for people because that's amazing. Yeah. There is so many services out there that the government offer. People complain about how much tax we pay, but we live in a pretty amazing country that offers, a lot of these opportunities that can help small business. Sophie, thank you so much for your time. I know you've got such a busy week. You've got so much going on. I'm going to love to follow your journey over the years to come, and hopefully at some stage we'll meet in person and have a coffee.
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you so much for having me on.
No worries. Thanks, Sophie. Did you find this podcast valuable? There may be other nutrition professionals out there will also. If you like, share, and subscribe, it's going to help other nutrition professionals make an impact on the world just like you. Thanks.